Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining me again on this episode. Whilst I'm going through a journey of finding out who I am through the eyes of a white woman, reading the book with the prehistoric people, the Akikuyu of British East Africa. And this is an account of a very thorough account of the beginning of colonization in Kenya. And this is through the eyes of a woman called Catherine. And Catherine and her husband, Scoresby, I don't know if that's how you say it, Scoresby Rutledge, they are both basically in Kenya. And Catherine is an anthropologist, and her role is to literally study my tribe, the Akikuyu people. So if you see the previous episodes, I have talked about how they make contact and how they arrive in the country. And today we're going to look at how they communicate. What's interesting is that they actually learn Swahili, and they say the language employed was Swahili. This is as well known the tongue of the Swahili people, a coast race springing from the union of Arabs and native tribes. And so Swahili was actually a brand new language which started, hundreds of years back when the Arabs were coming to East Africa on their way to Pemba and Zanzibar looking for spices. And this early trade between Arabs and Africans forms a new language, because obviously the Africans couldn't speak Arabic, and Arabs couldn't speak the African languages. And so we see the marrying of two languages to create a brand new language called Swahili. Now, interestingly, you will hear, when you listen to Swahili language, you will hear words that are Arabic, things like salam and many other words, because that's directly from Arabic. And you will also hear words that are actually recognizable across the Bantu tribes, words like mvua, which basically means rain. And you will hear the same, like the Zulus of South Africa say mvua, and other people will say mvua for rain. You'll hear common words like nyama, which basically means meat, and these are words that are across the Bantu tribes. So anyway, we are looking at how Catherine and Scoresby are communicating with the natives. And so they are using the Swahili language. And it's interesting that British people actually go out of their way to learn another language, which we all know many British people don't speak another language. But just goes to show how determined they were in their mission of colonialism, that these two, they actually learn the Swahili language. And so they continue. It has been carried on, the Swahili language, by them. So they're talking about their potters and the people they're engaging with. So it has been carried with them into the interior by their trading and slave raiding expeditions. So this is how the Swahili language spread into the interior, because it's spoken in places like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Congo. And this is the language, I guess, of trade. And this is how it comes into my tribe, the Akikuyu people. And forms the lingua franca of this part of Africa. We each found, so him and his wife, Catherine, because this bit is actually written by Scoresby, we each found soon after arrival that our own knowledge of it made no pretense of being grammatical. There was, with care, no barrier to communication with the natives. So they're able to communicate because they've learned this language. More, especially in the case of those with whom we are in daily intercourse. I take that to mean the interaction, no. I hope not. Our upper servants were Swahilis, but they had in many cases been much with the Akikuyu and spoke their language. Okay, so this is not unusual. Like many Africans, they speak several languages. A few of the younger Akikuyu have picked up Swahili. And whenever we found one such person, he was immediately engaged for some small office. role, such as carrying a camera or a rifle, which made him one of our regular retinue and brought him into constant touch with ourselves. Thus, though frequently each party was speaking a foreign language, we gained the advantage of being able to dispense with an interpreter. So they're traveling around with an interpreter. They've gone to great lengths to understand the language because they need to really understand the culture, the people. And don't forget, all of this is being done so that they can find out how to colonize the people. It blows your mind. It completely blows your mind. Pains were, however, especially taken to guard against misunderstanding as possible source of error. All information being, for instance, restated by us and the subject of correction. It was also checked in other ways in order to ensure as great accuracy as possible. So they're talking about the collecting of information because this seems to be a really important mission for them. They need to understand the Agikuyu, the setup, the structures, the backbone of the Agikuyu tribe before they break it. It's wild. It's wild. I just cannot get over how just conceited the whole thing of colonialism is. For communication with older men, with the women, we were obliged to rely on the services of interpreters, a disability we shared with every government official who has been in the province in our day. Our servants, however, who acted in this capacity were accustomed to our ways and intelligently interested in what we desired to know. My God, you can even tell that the undertones of superiority, so they know what we want. They didn't know, though. They didn't know that you want to understand their culture so that ultimately you would know how to break it. They just thought that you were just visitors. They did not understand what your motive was because they had nothing to go by. All they saw was people who arrived, gave them gifts, and employed them, and for mere curiosity, because don't forget at this time there was no employment amongst the Agikuyu because they are all self-sufficient. They are all living off the land and nobody is employed by anybody. So even the people who agreed to work for Catherine and her husband Crespi, they doing so mainly out of curiosity, because as we find out later on, when the settlers eventually do arrive, they will become very, very frustrated because people just don't want to work for them. They have no value for goods. They have no value for any of this stuff because they are actually contented with their life. So please join me as we go down this journey of finding out who my people really were through the eyes of a white woman known as Catherine Rutledge.